everybody. This is Liz from Augusta, and I have someone that I am really excited for you to meet today. And we'll jump right in and tell us your name, where you're from, and introduce yourself.
All right. I'm Joel Heck from Lafayette, Colorado. I own the Lafayette branch of Augusta here. Used to be a software developer and started the location this year and been looking forward to it for a long time and looking to see where it goes.
And that is the most fascinating thing that I would love to dive into is your software development, where you came from, like your schooling, your interest in that, and how you got into that, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So yeah, we went to school as actually electrical and computer engineering background. But towards the end of that, decided that I wanted to do software development instead because it was more interesting to me at the time. So it went into that and pursued that for 3 years, first at General Electric and then 6 years at Amazon. And really loved it, learned a lot about it, had some great experiences. But for the last 2 or 3 years at Amazon, just was liking my role less and less. Even throughout my time at Amazon, I was looking at different roles such as being a project manager, even being a people manager. It was just my interests were changing over that time. And so towards the end of it, I was looking at what else could I be doing? Thought maybe I could start my own business or own my own business. So I actually had a short-term rental that I bought a couple years ago and thought about managing that and getting management clients, building that business, but didn't really like it as much because a lot of it was really automated. So there wasn't a whole lot to do day to day. And so then I was like, well, I got to do something. And so then I started hearing about buying a business from Cody Sanchez and others and thought, well, maybe I could do that. And so I started listing businesses that I could buy. And for some reason, lawn care and landscaping was always in the back of my mind. I like being outdoors. I have zero professional experience with it or had before starting my location. But I do remember having a neighbor growing up who was next door who was a landscaper. He seemed to do pretty well. And so I thought maybe that's something I could try. And so I started Googling things like how to start a landscaping business. Eventually stumbled on landscape business course from Mike. Went through all of that. I was like, well, this definitely seems like something I could pursue. And here's all the systems that are needed to do it. And just learning the lawn care business, like the simple stuff like mowing, weeding, things like that, I could learn out on my own using YouTube or whatever. So I figured there's a low bar of entry there and just kind of pursued that. And that's kind of how I got my start.
Oh, that's a great synopsis. So going back to your job with GE, were you working on software there?
I was working on avionics software.
And then when you moved on to Amazon, you did the same thing, right? So what kind of things were you working on then that they were developing?
Sure. So with Amazon, I was working on front end. So basically creating websites, mostly internally. So for most of my time there, I was working with an AWS, helping them build kind of, you could say internal IT websites for them to have dashboards for their data centers to make sure that they were running properly from a power and network standpoint, making sure all the servers were plugged in, powered up, things like that. So that the operators on the ground could figure out if something was going wrong and go and address it immediately.
So did you feel like you maxed out your potential there, or there wasn't enough that was challenging for you to figure out?
It definitely felt like I was hitting kind of my max potential on my first team. And there's still ways to grow. And I was promoted a couple years later. So like there were still levels to grow. I certainly wasn't at the highest level of software engineer you could be at. But it was more of maxing out my interest in that role and that skill set. For years, I've been interested in personal development and kind of business and management and kind of learning about that. And I felt that in my role, it was hard to develop those skills because it was mostly an individual contributor, kind of heads down, writing software all day. And I saw that the path to management, which I was trying to pursue the last couple of years at Amazon, still would have taken me maybe 3-4 years. And if I wanted to switch companies, they'd want experience in that before hiring me. So it was kind of a chicken and egg problem where I'd have to have the experience to go and do the job at another company, but it would take me a few years at Amazon to kind of transition into that. But then I thought, well, if I just had a business, I could just be a manager from day one, gain the experience that way.
So was it as you started to listen to podcasts and better yourself and start to change internally that you were just craving something more?
hmm Yeah, I was just craving something different, and like lately, probably the last year or so, I've been learning a lot more from like Gary V, Alex Ramosi, Mike, and just learning more about how to run a business, doing sales, doing marketing, and that interested me a lot more than learning the latest in software development and the latest in those skill sets. So my interest really shifted
Mhm.
and needed another outlet to grow in that way.
So you got landscape business course
Mhm.
and you hadn't done any of the business yet or started a business yet. Was it confusing to you, or was the simplicity of how simply he started the whole thing, did it make sense to you?
Yeah, it made a lot of sense to me. Like I said, had tons of pages of notes, so it's just like, and I started with the short term rental business. I knew how to create an LLC, do the business bank accounts, do some basic accounting, talk with contractors and such. But never kind of trained people, never managed people, and never done the lawn care side of things. So it was definitely using that course was definitely all I needed to get started. And then joining Augusta just made it a lot easier because a lot of the systems come included.
Hmm. So when you thought of working with people, the people in your departments and people under you, was there something in you that thought, okay, I have something here that I can actually manage people and start to work with other people and develop them?
That's a good question. I always got feedback from my peers that I could kind of take a complex topic or subject and break it down to simpler things and kind of communicate that to the rest of the team. Um, and so I felt that if I could do that, that's kind of one part of kind of training new people
Mhm.
and managing other people. And although sometimes find it hard and still find it hard to kind of have empathy for other people and understand where other people are coming from and see things through their lens, it's something that I do want to focus on and work on myself. And so having that challenge just makes it all the more interesting to me to become a better manager and learn how to become a better manager. And so I think I have that internal drive to that helps with that management aspect. Whereas if I didn't, I just thought, oh, I just want to be a leader because it sounds cool.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be as effective.
Yeah, for sure. So when you started listening to landscape business course, was Mike, had he even franchised at that point?
Yeah. So this was August of last year. So the franchise had been around for 3 years at that point. It was before he did a lot of the update videos. So it was like all the original videos in the course. Um, but the franchise was definitely in operation at that point.
So you kept watching landscape business course and all the things he was adding on to that.
Yep.
And has that still been beneficial to you now? Or is it kind of like, I've got all this, I don't need that, and you're getting all the content that you need now without having to resort back to that?
Um, yeah, I would say with probably because within Augusta, a lot of material you just kind of get daily through the masterminds or other places that are available internally. The one thing I do go back to occasionally every couple of months is just to see what his update videos are
Mhm.
for the more kind of advanced topics that are not part of the basic course, but that he keeps adding every couple of weeks.
Mhm. So what was the final thing that really caused you to join after you started researching the franchise?
That's a good question. Um, I think for me, it was a lot of things. I talked with Lee, I talked with Thomas and Garrett, who are both franchisees here in Colorado, to get their take on it. um, and kind of the biggest hang up for me at the time was I was still looking at buying a business and not starting from scratch because I didn't have the lawn care experience. So I was concerned that, um, like, how would I know how to start the business and
Mhm.
deliver the services, especially since it was my plan to still be a full-time software developer for the first 6 months of operation. So I had a lot of concerns there and thought that if I bought a business that already existed, they had clients, so there's work to do, there are employees, maybe a manager in place already, and so I can just take that, transit to Augusta, and kind of start running. But then talking with Garrett, he kind of told me that I could spend the money that I would spend on down payment for an SBA loan to buy a business that was already at $300,000-$400,000 in revenue, and just put it towards marketing and grow that same size of business within 2 years. And so that made a lot of sense to me. And yet I wouldn't have the debt hanging over my head. And so that really got me thinking, well, maybe I should just start a business from scratch, and put the fear aside and try to figure out how to mitigate those risks. And so what I ended up doing was booking a one-on-one call with Mike to get his feedback and advice directly. And what he told me was just go find a GM, because the success of the location depends on the GM. Especially starting out, they need to sell and be able to get clients and work on the schedule. So I took that to heart in the beginning of December. And by the end of December, I had found a GM who's going to start at the beginning of March. And later that week, just told Lee, like, hey, I want to get started in January. Let's go. Let's do this. And I think that was really Mike's kind of advice, and my being able to find that GM was really what caused me to get started.
That's incredible. So you're getting advice from two people at both of them make sense. And you were still at Amazon at the time? Or
Mhm.
you're doing your own software thing? Okay, so you're still at Amazon, and the whole thing was that you were going to do that full time. And was your plan until your revenue was enough that you could quit Amazon, or were you just planning to continue to stay there and then run Augusta on the side?
Yeah, the probably financially smart decision would have been
Yeah.
to continue at Amazon, because I was making a really good salary there. But I was just burned out. I was tired. I didn't really like where I felt like the organization that I was in at the time. So kind of backtracking a little bit, when I was doing landscape business course back in August, the organization I was working for within Amazon actually shut down. So there was a couple of weeks where there was nothing to do before the organization shut down. That allowed me to do the course full time, like basically watch the video 6 to 8 hours per day, every day. But then when I got transferred, luckily I got to keep my job and get transferred to a new organization. But it kind of just got stood up kind of at once, and I didn't feel like there was really a vision for where it was going, or at least I wasn't aligned with the vision that they had for the business. And I didn't really like the the kind of tools that I was in, product that I was building at the time. So I just really needed a way out. And
Mhm.
so my plan was to get out at the end of June, and I ended up doing that. Um, so basically the plan was have the GM run the location through until June, build up enough savings so that I could kind of not have to work for about 6 months, and then figure out what to do after that, um, and kind of go from there.
And so did you keep your GM, and then did your GM start training you on all the procedures of the lawn care business?
Yeah, so I had the GM start in March, and he had about 6 years of landscaping experience with another company in the area. So I kind of relied on him to train up the guys on like the lawn care and aspect of the business, while I was training him on the Augusta systems, how to use service autopilot, how P4P works, things like that. And then slowly kind of learn more about the lawn care side of the business myself. And then unfortunately, in about mid-June, he ghosted me. And then I was luckily 2 weeks away from quitting at Amazon, but at that point kind of had to,
Wow.
because then I had to take over the responsibilities of the GM. And so at the beginning of July, it was my first time full-time as the GM, and actually full-time in the field, because I'd never done, or I'd only worked a couple of days in the field here and there to help out, before that point. But in July, I was full time, basically running the location, working out in the field.
Scary. Did you have any other employees?
Yeah, we had two other guys, and luckily I didn't burn them out through spring rush, even though I kind of screwed up and had them working 55-hour weeks,
Wow.
for a month and a half. But the first guy is still with us. He's our best employee. The second guy, he was also a great employee, but decided to move to South Carolina. Um, so luckily, yeah, we did have a couple of other employees at the time, and we're able to manage the schedule to get it all to fit. We had to move projects around, but it mostly ended up working.
So how did you do on your first spring rush with no experience?
We did basically we hit my projections for kind of revenue based on trying to get to 250 in the first year. My biggest mistake was, again, the scheduling, is that you hear people talking about how March, April is kind of spring rush time. So we're going through April and starting to mow, and mowing clients and leads were just kind of trickling in. Wasn't a whole lot. So I was like, well, maybe we're a new company. People don't really trust us. They don't know about Augusta yet. And so maybe this is just what's going to happen. My actually initial projection was that we'd get 60 mowing clients over the course of the season. And what happened was we went from about 30 at the beginning of May to 100 at the end of May. And it just
Oh
turns out
my word.
May was our spring rush. And so that's why I got kind of caught behind, was because I filled up our May schedule with projects thinking we're not going to grow very quickly. And then just flooded in. We're just way behind.
That's awesome. So do you think that was brand awareness that brought that to you, or were you in your, Google ranking, or were you marketing?
We're doing a lot of different marketing. I did a lot of every door direct mail, so postcards through the post office. Looking back on the data, I don't think it worked out that well, but it may have helped with brand awareness, if not getting specific jobs on the schedule, but did get us about, I think, 60 clients or so, which is not too bad. And then, but I really do think our Google ads and Google local services and our ranking on Google is our primary driver for clients and has been all season. Because if I look at what we get from every door direct mail, door hangers, Facebook ads, they really aren't adding up to a whole lot. And so I think a lot of it's coming from Google.
Did you have any experience in the projects area?
Nope.
Wow. So were you YouTubing, or depending on your two employees?
It was depending on the employees, but for projects we just stick to the simple stuff. We don't do any hardscaping. We don't do any artificial turf. We don't really do anything that's not just manual labor, essentially. So for projects, it's mulch installs, rock installs, landscape fabric, and property cleaners for the most part.
And then you have a full repertoire of mowing clients as well.
Yep. Yeah, we're up to, I think we ended the season with 120.
And was that your goal?
Goal is 60. So we doubled the goal.
Wow.
And my goal is to fill the rest of it with projects. So we ended up having a lot more mowing and less projects, which is good because I prefer the recurring services.
Yeah. What CRM are you using?
We're using Service Autopilot, and then we just got the email to switch to Copilot next week.
How exciting. So how was Service Autopilot for you? Probably pretty easy.
For the most part, yeah. Because I didn't come in with any knowledge of any other CRMs or any biases. So it's just like, well, this is the way it is. There are a couple of issues with it over time, but for the most part, it's been pretty easy to use.
Yeah, it's matured over time. When we first started using it, it was a lot of bugs, just like when you start any CRM. And, we labored with them. We were able to, give our own suggestions of what we would like to see. And so it took them a long time, but they did get some of those in. But I found that most of the time it's the workarounds that we had to build to really fit the systems of Augusta. So the CRM with Copilot is going to be pretty exciting. We're pretty excited about it. So are you nervous about your switch to Copilot?
I don't think so. Now that mowing's done, it's a little less hectic. And I've watched a little bit of the Copilot Academy so far. And so it looks like a lot of things are similar, just the UI is a little bit different. So I feel like it will be a pretty easy transition, and I'm excited to get to access a lot of the features that are in Copilot that we don't get in Service Autopilot.
Yeah, exactly. Do you miss being at Amazon now?
No. I miss the paycheck, but I am a lot happier now, even though the business has not always been up and up. There's been struggles here and there. But overall, I'm much happier now than I was at Amazon. And I really, honestly, thinking now, I'm not sure if I could go back to being an employee now that I've had the kind of taste of being freedom, being a business owner and having everything on myself, because that was kind of one thing that drove me towards this, was that in my role at Amazon, if there were problems, I could tell my manager about them and try to get him to kind of do something about them. But ultimately, there's nothing I could do about them.
Yes.
Whereas in my business, if there's a problem, it's on me, and everything's on me. And so if there's a problem and if I don't fix it, then that's up to me and it's my fault. And so I really like that I have the ability to grow the business as much as I can or as little as I want, and being able to fix the problems as they come up.
Yeah, exactly. So moving into the winter, how is it for you there? Do you offer snow services or can you offer winter services there?
Yeah, we are looking to switch to winter services next week. We'll see how that goes. I think we're about half of our mowing customers have not opted out. So we'll see if some of them still trickle out of it. Um, I decided so far, and we may switch it, to not offer snow removal services, just not to not complicate it, because I've heard from people back in the spring that snow is a whole different business,
Yes.
whole different type of scheduling and such. And so I just wanted to kind of keep things simple, see how it goes without snow this winter. Try to sell more of the project cleanups, the leaf cleanups, um, and then next year revisit the snow conversation, because I think Garrett, I think, has done snow removal. Thomas hasn't, but I think this year is his first year trying it, and so I'm curious to see how their experiences have been, and learn from that going into next year.
If you had to do it all over again to join Augusta, is there anything you would do different?
I guess just like anything that you kind of pursue and have success with, is wish you started earlier.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say that I would have done anything differently. The only thing I wish I would have done is anticipate the spring rush a little bit better, because they
Mhm.
train you on that. I knew it, but it's just every week I was saying like, oh, we're at capacity 2 weeks out, but then 3 and 4, we're not. And so I was like,
Yep.
oh, we just need to get through the next 2 weeks. The next 2 weeks will be fine. And it just kept every week I kept saying that, and every week I was wrong. Um, and so I guess that'd be the only thing that I'd try to change.
Yeah, that's a good problem, I suppose. So your analytical mind is probably what has helped you to be so successful in that you put systems, you took the systems, you put them in place, and you feel like you were maybe one of those people that believed in the systems and kind of followed them blindly, and then it was successful for you.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Like when I was going through the business course, like I was taking notes on how to build all these systems, and so I was definitely bought into, this is how to do it. There's no other way to do it, because I didn't know any other way to do it.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
saw Mike had built up this successful business, and then later the franchise. I was like, well, it must work. So who am I to say differently?
yeah. So you were probably one of your competitive advantages is that you had no experience.
Hmm.
That's
That can
fantastic.
definitely help out to be a little bit naive, and just kind of blindly trust the people who are coaching you.
Yeah, no bad habits to break.
Hmm.
Yeah. So ending the season here, are you going to have to lay some guys off? Do you have two, four?
Yeah, so we have 2 field guys and a GM. So I hired and onboarded a new GM at the end of August and into September. Um, but we'll keep on one guy, and one guy decided he also does golf coaching. So he's told us that he actually wanted to leave in a couple of weeks. So it actually worked out well, because
Mhm.
we kind of um, have less capacity, or less work on the schedule after the mowing season. So the timing worked out well. So he will just kind of voluntarily leave, and we'll try to bring him back on in March or April.
Oh, that's great. I know a lot of struggle for business owners in this industry is you get attached to the guys and you know that their livelihood depends on you. And it's
Hmm.
extremely difficult to give them the news that we just don't have enough for you and you're going to have to be off for 3 months and hope they come back, but understand that they might not be able to.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, looking to the future, what are your big goals? Let's say 5 years.
Sure. So in 5 years, I like to have this Lafayette location in profit mode at about 700 to 800,000 revenue. So large enough for to be interesting and manageable for one person to manage as a GM, and then open up 2 other locations every 2 years, kind of from now. So by in 5 years to have 3 locations all in this area, um, which should one the goal for me is to allow it to have enough profit coming in to replace the salary that I was getting from Amazon.
Mhm.
And then two is to have the opportunity for the guys who are working in the field to move up, because I really like about Augusta the focus on bringing guys out of the field and moving them up into management roles, into owner roles, or even just better roles in other industries. And so I feel like if I had just one location, I'd be telling them all about that. And granted, there is the 3F program, franchise fee forgiveness program, to allow them to become owners, but not everybody wants to do that necessarily.
Right.
Um, so I want to have other locations to have the opportunity for guys to move into management roles, and not just tell them a bunch of smoke.
Yeah.
And so that's also part of the reason to have multiple locations in 5 years, to give that momentum to other guys.
Are you the kind of person that are just, you have this goal mapped out and you just steady, just keep putting one foot in front of the other? Or do you overthink things and get really anxious and depressed?
I think I do overthink things a bit, but at this, I think I move more, or I've tried to move less and less, or more and more away from that
Mhm.
thinking, and just kind of take things as they come. So I do have the plan, and I know what I want to do this year. This year was about 250K in revenue, and we're going to hit that. Next year is to get to 500 and basically double the business. Year after that is to grow it a little bit more to 700, and then open a second location. So I have those big goals mapped out, but I'm not really too worried about exactly how we're going to get there. We'll just kind of take those as your big moonshot goals, and then just kind of one step at a time, get towards them.
How do you feel like you've changed as a person once you've made this big leap and now you've got the responsibility of these other people that you're leading?
Yeah, I definitely feel responsible for them. One of our values here at Augusta is extreme ownership, and I take that very seriously, because I need to make sure that there's enough work on the schedule for all the guys, and at the same time, make sure they're doing a great job for our customers, because at the end of the day, that's who we're serving. Um, and so I think since joining Augusta, it's grown me to be someone who's more coachable and open to learning from anybody.
Mhm.
Part of that's because I started out not knowing anything, so I was just open to everything.
Yeah.
But as a software developer, where I was really good at my job and got great feedback from my managers. So I probably had a little bit of an ego and a little bit of I know how to do the right thing. And so it
Mhm.
was kind of helpful going to Augusta, not having that experience, and just having to kind of completely switch and just
Yeah.
be open to learning everything, being open to getting coaching, taking the advice from the coaches each month on our coaching calls, and implementing that, and being open to saying, I don't know the right answer, and seeking out help from other people. And
Mhm.
so a lot of the times I've felt like I've been kind of that professor who's one chapter ahead in the textbook from
Yeah.
the students. I'm doing the lecture, kind of learning these things, then passing it on to the team, and then learning them, passing them on,
Nice.
and not always knowing exactly how things are going to work out. And I've had to tell my GMs, like, we're just going to learn and figure it out as we go. I'm not going to know everything. We're going to have to adapt and iterate, and it's just kind of, we're going to learn as we go. And then at the same time, not knowing the lawn care side of things, I've also been a student for my team, and having to rely on my team to kind of teach me how to do certain things.
Mhm.
So it's been interesting to have that dichotomy since joining Augusta. And I think it's grown me to have more empathy, more being open to learning different things, and not thinking that I'm always right, or that everything has to come from me.
How do you think they have responded? Like you can gauge people pretty well, how they receive information from you, but how have they responded to you being so teachable and asking them questions and being kind of humble to learn from them? Do you think it's had an impact on them?
Um, I guess it's hard to say. I would say, just because there's been some transition from the initial three guys, only one guy's left, or one guy is left with us. Um, but I think he sees like what I'm trying to do, and that I am trying to kind of help them and learn from them. And he's always helpful, and like he's always the guy who's there early, setting up the trucks and such. And so he's always open to kind of teaching me and helping me improve. And then with the GM that I have, definitely open. I know it can be challenging at times when I'm trying to teach him things, and then the next week I'm like, oh, let's actually do something a little bit different.
Yeah.
Um, and so
Welcome
he's
to
definitely
Augusta.
been, yeah. And so he's kind of been open to that. I've been working more and more on developing a sense of like trying to show him the why we're doing this.
Yeah.
And also, instead of just telling him like, this is what we're going to do, asking him like, what do you think about this? Or just open-ended, like, here's a problem, what do you think about it, before I say anything. And sometimes he just has the same answer that I do. And so I'm like, yeah, that's great. Let's just go with that.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, sometimes it's really it's kind of disorienting to an employee to come from another place where their opinion wasn't even cared about, and now to have the owner actually like, I need you, I need your help, and reaching out to them. It's kind of empowering to watch some of them change
Mm-hmm.
because they feel so valuable.
Yeah, we actually had that conversation yesterday on our one-on-one, myself and my GM. I was telling him that at this point he's been on for about 2.5 months. And so at this point, I think he knows most of the responsibilities of his job and how to do them. And so I wanted him to take on more of an ownership role of the responsibilities and see me as more of a coach. And his feedback was, well, this is the first time I've had an owner tell me that. Like, I've worked for other owners and I've always had to run my decisions by them, and kind of ask them for everything. I'm like, that's not really the way I want to run things. And so he was open to that, and just we're slowly kind of transition into that, to give him more and more of that responsibility and have him grow as a leader and as a person within our organization.
Yeah. So as you've started to do this, you've transformed yourself, you're building a team. And what are the kind of things that you've transitioned to listening to help yourself grow? Probably the more elementary stuff in business. You don't feel like you have to eat that stuff up now. So
Mm-hmm.
how has your content changed?
Um, I would say that I actually listen to things less and less now. There was a podcast that Layla Hormozy did, probably a couple of months ago, and it's a trap that I have fallen into, where you kind of like want to listen to things and listen to podcasts, listen to audiobooks. But at a point, it kind of just becomes an addiction of just learning things and not
Yeah.
doing things.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to focus more on doing things, and then only listening to things if I have a particular need to. So, like right now, I want to kind of grow our social media presence at Augusta. So I've been watching a lot of um, videos about how to do landing pages, how to shoot video, how to edit video, things, kind of tactical things like that, instead of
Mhm.
more of the strategic things. But of course, I listen to Mike's mastermind videos every day, so I get some of the more strategic things from that,
Yeah.
um, and then just kind of try to filter everything else out.
Yeah. So, as an Augustan, do you feel like you have built relationships with other people within the organization that you would never have had outside of it?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I talked with Thomas and Garrett, who are down in Denver, about an hour south of me, and we have met up about 3 times this year for breakfast on a Friday or Saturday morning, just to kind of catch up, and talk business. It's easy for the two of them because they kind of share a space, but it's definitely helpful for me to kind of talk with them. And then even at conference, um, so I had that short-term rental property in Michigan, and I've lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan for 3 years before coming to Colorado. So I met a couple of the guys who are out in Michigan and talked with them, and it was really great to see what their experiences are like and how their business differs from ours, just because of the different climates or locations. So it's definitely been a great experience, talking to the other franchisees and the coaches and even the people at Command Center and seeing what they're doing.
Yeah. So, you have a growth model, right?
Yep.
So, you bought straight into growth. And so that means you can use a little bit more of the services from Command Center. And
Mhm.
how has it been for you working with Command Center while Command Center is still developing and growing themselves?
Yeah, so towards the beginning, I made the decision to basically have Command Center do everything that it's possible for Command Center to do for us, to take all the work off our plate and just to have us focus on the work and selling the work. And I really came to appreciate that when in July I had to go
No
into the field full
kidding.
time and be a manager, and couldn't just look at the dashboard all day while I was working at a computer. And so I really appreciated them doing the phone calls, taking emails, sending out estimates, doing invoicing, and then now they do our scheduling as well. And so it was a huge help to do that. And I don't know how I would have gotten around working without that. There have been certainly struggles here and there, with my not necessarily knowing exactly how, basically a difference in the expectations between how something's
Mhm.
supposed to work and how it does work.
Yeah.
And just kind of learning that over time. And of course, there are kind of just little mistakes that happen here and there because we're all people, and it just happens.
Mhm.
It would happen whether it's command center or an admin or even myself. I make
Yeah.
mistakes with what we're doing. Like I've on jobs have forgotten to put a price or a rate for the job, and then I have to go back in and remember to put it back in. I'm not perfect myself, but it's definitely been much better to have command center than to not have command center. And I would never go back to switching them off.
Yeah, that's awesome. So overall, the camaraderie that you have, do you have like a WhatsApp group that you're with Thomas and Garrett?
Yep.
And so that communication would be something you had never had. And then
hmm
having the back and forth, like to come to conference and to meet so many people, do you feel that that has helped you rather than if you decided, I'm just going to start a business, I'm going to be all alone out here in the wilderness? You feel very supported by the activities and what we have going on.
Certainly. Yeah. I mean, without being able to kind of ask questions in the Facebook group for Augusta, or just in that WhatsApp chat with Garrett and Thomas, if it's more like Colorado specific, um, it would have been a lot harder to grow and to find the answers that I needed. Like one big thing is like, when do you start mowing? Like
Hmm.
if without the experience before, I have no idea.
Yeah.
We ended up doing, I think, early April, just because we talked to another landscaper who we bought a kind of an initial list of clients from. I think Thomas did end of April, Garrett did sometime mid-April. So um, next year we'll probably do mid-April,
Hmm.
to kind of match with what they were doing. Um, but to, especially with having come in with zero experience, having those communication outlets to bounce ideas off of or ask questions has been hugely helpful.
Yeah. Um, I was going to ask about your family. That was a huge decision for you to leave Amazon. Was that
Mhm.
a struggle for your family to kind of work through that with you?
Yeah, so I am married. Don't have any kids yet, so have less responsibilities, and that was part of my reason for the kind of the timing of doing it, is that I figured, don't have a kid yet. We might or plan on doing it in the next couple of years. So I figured now's the time to do it, if any time.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to kind of risk it more when we had a child and had more financial burden. Um, my wife was definitely very, I think, hesitant at the start,
Mhm.
because obviously I had a huge salary and then just go away. But we do have a healthy set of savings set aside, and that was part of the reason for the timing, was that was kind of growing that up, and I was okay with taking the leap because we had that set aside. And she still has a really well paying job as well, and so kind of those factors contributed to it. And she's, I think, a little bit more emotional, but than I am. And so for me, it's all about the logic of
Yeah.
things. Like, hey, we have the savings. This is the good time. I don't like my job. I can kind of grow things up. And then, like, I
Yeah.
was showing her trying the roadmap of like 3 years, 5 years, I'll replace the income. Granted, it's not guaranteed, but I believe in myself, and she believes in me that I can get there, because she's seen me be successful in other avenues, including at Amazon. Um, so I think it was just kind of over time trying to just find different ways to kind of convince her that this was the right move. Um, and what I really should have done was bring her to conference back in January,
Mm.
because I heard from, I think it was Tommy Mello, um, about or about how to, that if you kind of want to convince someone, like, you go to all the conferences and listen to all these podcasts and get all this information, but your spouse isn't. And so
Yes.
they're just getting the information from you, and just kind of trusting you. But they can't the only answers they can get are from you.
Yeah.
Um, and so if you bring them to the conferences, then they can hear it from other people, see the other things. So I brought her this year, a couple weeks ago, to Louisville, and it made her realize, oh wow, Augusta is so much bigger than she thought it was. Augusta, they were doing so many different things. You have all these franchisees here. She got to talk to some of the other spouses of other franchisees, And so I think that made her a lot more comfortable, even though it's been a year now since we've been in business, with the jump and with the path forward.
So she found there were other crazy people like you.
Yeah.
And did she get to talk to people at the conference and maybe meet some other wives that had had some of the same reservations?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm so glad she came. I didn't get to talk to you two personally, but I saw you and I wish I could have touched with everyone. But recently, seemed kind of out of the blue, I got an email from Chuck with a new idea you had that would be helpful. We have coaching that is provided to the franchisees, and they can come to their coaching monthly and they go over all their metrics and where they are, their closing ratios and everything, and they put together a plan for the next month. They kind of get a score from where they are. But as you have come to these coaching, I'm assuming, do you come every month to them?
Yep.
And so as you were coming to all of these, you must have been seeing some way it could be improved. So tell us about how that thought process started and how you came to present the idea to us.
Sure. So originally when I started back in March, I think for the first month or two, it was still before the kind of coaching scorecard sheet was a electronic PDF. It was just a physical sheet that was kind of mailed back and forth. And the PDF was definitely a helpful step forward because you could send it between the coach and yourself more easily and get those updates. But I don't know if it was just my computer or I was just doing something wrong. But for whatever reason, with the PDF, certain fields just wouldn't. It was an editable document. Certain fields wouldn't save, and so I'd open it back up, and the information I put in there was not there, which was a frustrating aspect. And then on a second note is that you fill out these scorecards, have the coaching call, and then throw it into a folder and then never look at it again, because it's not really, if you want to go look back, you'd have to open up 6, 12 different documents and then just kind of scan across them, which isn't a great experience to kind of see how you're improving month to month and if you're actually working on the action plans that have been set out. And then I was also keeping a separate spreadsheet. I know some other franchisees also keep their own separate spreadsheet for KPIs to kind of track their progress month to month. So I figured there must be a better way to do this, because the PDF was a good step forward, but I didn't think it was like the final step. So I wanted to create a web application that would make it easy for everybody to enter all their information, eventually maybe have Copilot enter all that information automatically for them, to have less manual entry, and then be able to track their progress month to month. And so they can see how their revenue grows each month. They can see how their close ratio is improving. They can see what their action plan is and see if they're actually hitting those action plans. And then not even just see it on a graph, but also or on a table, but see it in a graph to see that curve going up, or how they're improving.
And so when you presented this to us, you obviously were presenting it out of a need, and it has been something that Mike actually brought you on board to. This is what we need. This would help, and you gave us suggestions of how to switch it up. And now we have this great thing that we have. Have we started implementing that already, or we're going to do a soft launch?
Yeah, I heard from, I think it was Lee, that they're going to start doing a soft launch and testing it with some franchisees. I already got some feedback from them on how to make some improvements. But I'm really happy to see it have some great reception from you all on the leadership team, and really hope that it works out, and see where it goes from there.
Yeah. So did that kind of fulfill an itch you had for still developing software?
I think it does. It's funny
You still got
because part of the reason for like the lawn care thing is I want to be outside, but at the same time, as a business owner, you're still kind of stuck on in front of the computer. You're not
Yeah.
really meant to be doing the field work inside of the business. And there is kind of I think still a desire within me to just build something, whether that's through software, that's building a business. Software is just easy because you can just kind of do it for free wherever. And I actually built this using a no-code platform called Bubble. So I actually didn't write a line of code to develop this application. And I took it as a project to kind of learn this platform, because I'd heard about it before, but had never really used it and found it to be really powerful and really interesting. And so I may continue to use it for other projects. to kind of continue building new things. But yeah, definitely satisfied an itch I think I still have to build things, whether that's through software, through the business.
Yeah, awesome. Well, you never know. We might end up doing a lot more together in the future.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Yeah. So, what would you say to somebody that was in your shoes with a job they don't really like and take this huge risk and jump into something else? What would you say to them in that struggle?
Um, I would. I don't know if you'll ask it later, but kind of quote I have on a whiteboard to my left is from Jeff Bezos, who's founder of Amazon. And it says that most of our regrets are acts of omission, the things we didn't try, the paths untraveled. Those are the things that haunt us. And that really resonates with me because if
Mhm.
I look back, I try not to have regrets because there's nothing you can do about them. You can just
Yeah.
move forward. But the regrets that I do have fall right into that, or the things that I just didn't do out of fear. And I really didn't want to continue on my software job year for the next 10, 20 years, and say like build up enough savings to just retire off of that. And then look back on my deathbed and say, well, could I have started a business and been just as
Mhm.
successful or more successful through that and not have tried it?
Yeah.
Just out of fear of the risks of the unknowns of is this going to work or not? Um, and so I would say try not to let that fear stop you. If and just have belief in yourself to be successful because if you are driven to succeed, I think you will. It just takes a lot of small steps. It's not going to happen all at once. It's going to happen slowly. But if you put yourself around people who support you and
Mhm.
can get you there, there's no reason that you can't get there. And so it's just can't let that fear stop you from pursuing your dreams.
That's huge. That's so helpful. So, yes, I was going to ask you about a quote to wrap things up today. That was phenomenal. I think that you should read it again.
Yeah, so it's most of our regrets are acts of omission, the things we didn't try, the paths untraveled. Those are the things that haunt us. And if you probably want a more poetic version, you could probably just read was it Robert Frost's poem, "The Road Untraveled."
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of same concept there.
Do you actually read any biographies or listen to them on Audible, like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or any of them? Do you find that fascinating?
I haven't recently, but have done Jeff Bezos' one. I've done I forget the Starbucks founder's one,
Yeah.
name. I've done
Yeah.
his. I've done the Ashley Vance one for Elon Musk, and a couple of others. They're certainly fascinating, especially Elon's story of
Yes.
where he came from and how he just persevered over so many struggles and has built what he's built.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Yeah, so thank you for your time today. I was so excited to hear from you and to learn your story. Your I know people that have worked at Amazon. I've hired people that have worked at Amazon, but it's usually on the surface level of contracting out their product and just on, almost the customer facing where they're just going from door to door, traveling and delivering packages. And so I was excited to hear from somebody more working in the internal side of things
Hmm. Yeah,
and
thanks.
why you would leave. And so that is pretty phenomenal to know that it's not all about the money. There's other things that give you purpose. And then I believe that the money will come once you throw yourself into something else and give 100%.
Certainly, yeah. And thanks for having me here.
Yeah, you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Liz. Bye.
Bye.